Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this gray Saturday morning. I don't know about you, but I am kind of digging this weather. You get it? We're going to be talking about bulbs today, digging. Anyway, we're going to be, today's topic is bulb planting for spring color. It's presented by the Master Gardeners of Placer County. My name is Becky Fritchie, and I will be your moderator today. As you saw in the opening slides, this workshop is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube site after it's been uploaded. The link to the video and accompanying resources can be accessed from our website, which is pcmg.ucanr.org. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can post them through the chat menu, and we will ask our presenter to address them at the end. All right, Sandy, take it away.
Well, thank you, Becky, and good morning, all. It's October, and in Placer County, this is the best time to plant bulbs for beautiful spring blooms. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. I'm so pleased to be with you today to share some information about bulbs. This presentation is based on an earlier rendition created by Ann Beinhorn and Marie Sailors, both Placer County Master Gardeners. We're fortunate to have Ann with us today. She's the host for this workshop, and she's going to assist us in answering the questions. Thank you so much, Ann. For those of you that have seen Master Gardener workshops before, we start with 3 introductory slides that talk about the Master Gardeners. So you see Master Gardeners of Placer County extend research-based, sustainable gardening and composting information. To the home gardener, we present accurate and impartial information, and we encourage the public to make informed gardening decisions. There's a whole lot of places where you can find the Master Gardeners. This slide identifies some of our online, media, and special publications. One of the most important links for you, or number to remember, is our hotline. This is an Ask the Master Gardener hotline. You can submit your questions by calling or submit online, and Master Gardeners will research the answer and get back to you. We're on website, Facebook, Instagram. There's a monthly column in Gold Country Media that you can follow us on. And the best publication is The Curious Gardener. It's a quarterly newsletter edited and written by Master Gardeners of Placer County. It's free, and you can request it anytime you'd like by going to the website, and it'll be delivered to you. From our website to your email. Sorry, I got a little distraction there with something popping up on my screen. You can also find Master Gardeners at workshops like this one, at fairs and festivals and special events. One of the unique features of our Master Gardener program is something we call Speakers by Request. So at any time that your group, a Rotary group, a PTA group, a service club, want to request a speaker on gardening, you contact Speakers by Request and we'll provide one to you. We do many workshops like the one today. We used to be out in the community doing these workshops at various venues, but now with COVID, we're reaching you via Zoom. Thanks for joining us. You can find us at Farmers Market. Historically, we've been at 2, Auburn on Saturday and the Roseville Fountains on Tuesday. This year, we added Mahaney Park in Roseville on Sundays on 1 day a month. And next year, you can find us at Fowler's Ranch. We do a number of fairs and festivals by setting up an education booth. You can find us at the Mandarin Festival. We'll be there all 3 days. Stop by and learn about citrus. Stop by and say hi. We'd love to see you. Our garden fair happens in April. It's a family-friendly event to let people of all ages learn about gardening. And our very special Mother's Day garden tour. It's our 35th year this year. Look forward in May, and wouldn't that be a great holiday gift for someone in your family? This is a photograph of our 2022 gardening guide and calendar. That's how many of you know us, is through our calendar sales. You want to get your gardening guide before they're all sold out this year. They're going fast. You can do that by clicking on our website, or you can do that by buying them from any number of our vendors. So today we're going to spend some time talking about bulbs, and we're fortunate that there's so many kinds of bulbs that you can use. It's a gardener's dream in terms of how you plant and place and utilize the beauty of bulbs. So today we're going to talk about the basics, the structures, planting, maintenance, pest management, and forcing. Now, I chose this picture for the slide. I'm particularly fond of a Chinese ground orchid. I will tell you that it is more of a spring-summer bulb structure than it is spring, but they're beautiful little petite petals. They look like their name, the ground orchid, easy to grow. They like a little bit of afternoon shade. My mother-in-law has clusters of these. This is where mine came from, taking them from her yard when I divided them. She's always called them a poor man's orchid. This beautiful photo was taken by Lynn Merrick. She's a master gardener at the Bouchard Gardens in British Columbia, Canada. Wouldn't we all love a yard that looks like that? So a bulb. A bulb is a plant that stores its complete life cycle in an underground storage structure. And a bulb refers to a specialized group of perennial plants that reappear year after year, and that's the magic of bulbs. Let's talk a bit about some basics when you think about bulbs. So we've already said that bulbs are an underground structure that store their food through a dormant period and then release when the dormancy ends. You'll want to choose bulbs that are plump, firm, and heavy. And this is my hand in a bulb barrel at one of the local nurseries. And you can see that I've selected two bulbs that meet that. They're plump, they're firm, and they're heavy. Obviously, you would not want to grab a bulb that's soft or squishy or dry or shriveled. So look for the best quality bulbs you can get when you're thinking about your garden. Large bulbs tend to equal more flowers. So if you buy larger, you tend to get more and perhaps larger blooms. It's important when you think about bulbs and what you want to do that you first know what your hardiness zone or sunset zone is for your location. Once you know that, you can match the bulb characteristics to your hardiness zone to help ensure success. Some bulbs are called hardy, and that means they're able to withstand cool temperatures or frost. Most of the spring bulbs are hardy, but some bulbs are what we call tender, and that is they can be damaged or destroyed when the weather's cold or there's too much frost. Tender bulbs tend to be those that bloom in summer or autumn, and they tend to need to be removed from the soil when they're through blooming, stored away, and replanted again every year. The tulips might be a beautiful example of a hardy bulb, and this is lovely. This is a Dance Fever collection. I just love the striation on those petals. Sometimes you can buy bulbs. Oops, I missed one. So when you're thinking about your garden area and you want to have a nice display of bulbs, because we know they're sometimes what you might call short-lived. You get the foliage, you get the bud, you get a bloom, and it's gone. But if you consider buying varieties that bloom early, that bloom mid-season, and bloom late, and plant them all together, then you're going to have a range of color in your garden bed that's going to last much longer. Also, a favorite of mine are bulbs that are called rebloomers. They bloom when they're supposed to. They take a little short dormant period, and then they rebloom. So this particular picture at the bottom happens to be a red rebloomer bearded iris. Looks a little short, and that may be because it's in its rebloom stage. And so they'll bloom when it's supposed to with all the other irises in the bed. And a couple months later, when the leaves are getting a little tired and the bed looks a little sad, these rebloomers pop back up and give me color a little bit later in the year. Some bulbs, tulips, narcissus, for example, tend to need a chill. And the chill is like a mimicking the cold night, say in Holland, where many of our bulbs might have come from. But that chill is necessary for dormancy. And without chilling, you're going to get short, stubby, and not very brilliant flowers or blooms from your bulb. So you'll want to refrigerate, and the bulb calls for chilling. You want to refrigerate it in a ventilated mesh bag in your refrigerator, and that will allow it to chill and go through its dormancy. And generally speaking, most bulbs require a division about every 3 to 5 years. You do that to expand the bulb population that you have and make sure you could prevent disease. That would be our basics for bulbs. I'm going to talk now about bulb structures. And we've already said that bulbs are a specialized group of perennial plants that bloom year after year. And there are 5 different kinds of bulb structures, and we'll list them, and then we'll talk about each of them as we go along. There's a true bulb, a rhizome, a tuber, a tuberous root, and a corm. So I just want to stop for a moment at this lovely picture. This is a friend of mine's backyard. She's got quite a large yard, and she's just allowed these Sparaxis to naturalize, the Sparaxis tricolor. They're also known as a harlequin flower. Beautiful, and she's got pink. I don't have pink. I might need to go visit her yard with a shovel one of these days. So what's a true bulb? There's a photo of a true bulb here at the bottom of the page. A true bulb is a compressed underground stem with a basal plate. And the basal plate would be right under here if we had tipped this bulb for the photo. A true bulb contains an embryonic plant or a growth point, and it's going to be nestled right up in here. True bulbs are surrounded by a modified fleshy leaf, papery leaf, or scale, depending on its kind. We'll talk about that in a moment. The best example of a true bulb, though not a spring flower, is an onion. Whoops, there's that onion. So you can see the basal plate, also the price tag on the back of it, right across here, the embryonic point up here, and the papery thin structure around it. You're all familiar with an onion, but if you think true bulb, you'll know that onion is a picture of that bulb. True bulbs can be tunicate, like tunic, or non-tunicate, and that's based on their structure. When you want to divide a true bulb, it's bloomed, you're ready to expand your bulb population. This is the mother bulb. These are the offsets, and you'll gently remove the offsets, and you have, in this case, 2 new bulbs to plant. So what's the difference between those words I used, a tunicate or a non-tunicate? A tunicate bulb has that papery outer scale. And you can see in this photo, the basal plate, the embryonic point, but you can see the papery outer scale that surrounds this bulb to help protect it from damage. Examples of true bulbs, we all know these: narcissus, amaryllis, daffodils, hyacinths are examples. I don't have a picture of a non-tunicate bulb because of time of year, but their outer scales are not papery. That's the difference, one's papery, one's not. They're more succulent-like and separate. And an example would have been a lily bulb. I brought 2 pictures in of true bulbs. I didn't pick the very traditional yellow daffodil. I tried to pick something else that you might find interesting when you think about bulbs that you'd like to plant. The one on the left is called a Peruvian daffodil. It is actually more of a summer bloomer than a spring, but it was so unique, I felt we had to put it into the story. So this Peruvian daffodil is a hybrid of 2 summer blooming bulbous plants that grow in the tropical region. So they do okay in our area. They have common names. You might recognize this as a spider lily or a sea daffodil. Now, I had this planted in a garden bed, and if you look carefully, you'll see some of the drying leaves from some of my spring bulbs that still remain on the ground. So that is a Peruvian daffodil. And on the right, we have butter and eggs daffodil, a pale yellow daffodil with a bright yellow center. Beautiful. Another bulb structure is a rhizome. And a rhizome is a thickened stem that grows partially or entirely below the ground. These rhizomes tend to be planted very shallow or near the top of the soil. So they have a modified underground stem. They grow horizontally, and later on we'll have a better picture that shows that. The roots grow directly down from the underside. There's a primary growing point at one end of the rhizome, and that's where you see, oops, here, you'll see the new growth coming up here. And you can divide these rhizomes by cutting them into sections where you see a visible growing point. So examples of rhizome structures that you might want to look at would be the agapantha, the calla lily, bearded iris, and lily of the valley. So here's some pictures of rhizomes. The first on the left is an agapantha. It's that new bright purple called purple cloud, though they come in blue and white. Some people call them 4th of July flowers or firecracker flowers because of their coloring and their bloom during July. So they're a little bit later than a spring bulb as well, in terms of what we're showing today. Some people call this the lily of the Nile, but it's not a lily and it doesn't come from the Nile. It actually comes from the southern part of Africa. My favorite rhizome, without a doubt, I have agapanthus in the front yard, but in my treasured backyard bed is my bearded iris bed. These are two of my favorites. The top one is called Jurassic Park, though that yellow-blue combination for bearded iris is so popular that you'll find almost the identical plant with a slightly different name. And the bottom is called Fall Fiesta. We're going to talk now about another structure called a corm. It is similar to the true bulb. You'll notice its size a little smaller, but it is an underground stem. And again, you'll see the basal plate at the bottom. The roots grow from that basal plate. You can pretty much tell that this is a corm or a bulb structure that should be vertically oriented with the growth point right there at the top coming up. So that terminal bud will always be facing to the top as you plant. They say, the resource documents that I used for this presentation suggest that a corm normally will last one season, but I know that my freesia and spar axis come back year after year. So anyway, it depends, doesn't it? That's what we say in Master Gardeners. You can divide a corm by separating the new ones. And usually what happens is after the bulb has put out its foliage and blossomed and starts to die back, a new corm is actually going to grow right here on top of this base. So it'll be very easy for you to see and separate a new comb if you want to plant additional. Examples of corms include the Crocemia, crocus, freesia, aglad, and a spar axis. Let's look at some pictures of those. We'll start with the Crocemia because it's absolutely stunning. This is a bright orange. When I was growing up, the ones in my yard in Northern California were more of a yellow color, but they're all the same plant, just this beautiful color, striking. They're related to the gladiola, and you can see why. Their blossoms start here and continue to unfold as they go down towards the tip of the bloom. They're kind of an arched stem, and so they're very beautiful and a good accent flower behind others that are shorter. So they're quite lovely. This is, however, a summer, could be a spring to summer bulb. I want to talk for a second about the spar axis. You know, I happen to like it, and this is a close-up that really shows why it's called a tricolor. You can see that black rim that distinguishes between the yellow and the red. But look at this. This was 2 weeks ago in that same garden bed where the Peruvian daffodil was. And here comes my spar axis already sprouting in October. The foliage, a good picture of the foliage there. And like my lobelia is still there. It's time to take it out and let the spar axis grow and do its thing. We're going to take a look now at another structure called the tuberous root. And a tuberous root is an enlarged fleshy tissue. And you can see here in the bulb that they're dry, but as they're planted and receive water and nutrients, they become fleshy. So they are a true root, and they thicken in order to store the nutrients. The roots are fibrous, and that's used for the uptake of water and nutrients into the plant. They tend to grow in clusters, and the growth buds are at the base of the old stem. So we have an old stem, and the growth continues to come out from that. You can divide a tuberous root by cutting the root cluster. So you'd say, so let's assume this is now a plant that's been the bulb's been planted and the plant's grown and it's all done, these will still be fleshy roots and you can make a division there and have a new plant or a new bulb. A common example of a tuberous root is a sweet potato. So examples of spring flowers, though, or flowers include Astramaria, dahlias, which would be a summer bloom, daylilies, ranunculus, and peonies. So I have to include this photo of this white peony. It's my favorite. It's been in the ground for 10 years. I absolutely love the peony. It makes me happy. And this pink tint that comes through this white one, I think is just stunning. According to the American Peony Society, peonies do fine in full sun. That's 6 to 8 hours. With appropriate soil, you'll find they're very easy to grow. Unfortunately, peonies do not give you instant gratification. Has anyone ever heard the term sleep, creep, leap? Well, that is what peonies do. They sleep for the first year, they creep out into the second year, and they leap into full bloom by the third year. But once established, a peony will reward you for years to come. My mother-in-law has a peony that they planted when they moved into the house 53 years ago, and that peony is still producing. So like many in the bulb family, though, it depends. And what I mean by that is the research documents will tell you that peonies are not recommended for a hardiness zone above 8. But I beg to differ. I'm at a 9A, but it is sheltered and protected in some ideal situation. The top of the page is a ranunculus, a Persian buttercup ranunculus. That was in my neighbor's yard. They are known for their bright color and ruffly edges. They're a good cut flower, though that little guy's not going to be in a vase for a couple of years probably. And down below is a daylily. We're all familiar with them. This one is called Grape Magic, and I can assure you in person it is much more purple than this picture shows you. Let's talk now about tubers. These are without a doubt the most unusual bulbs you've ever seen. You kind of hold them in your hand and try to figure out what's up and what's down. So a tuber is a swollen underground stem base, like a corm, but without the corm shape. That didn't mean to confuse you, but it clearly does not have the shape of a traditional bulb. There's no basal plate on this guy anywhere. These bulbs do not have a basal plate. So the roots grow from all sides. They have multiple growth points. And as a new tuber grows, the old one disintegrates. But you can divide it into sections. And a common example of a tuber is the old-fashioned white potato. It's a tuber. For plants, we look at anemones, we look at cyclamen, or we look at tuberous begonias. And here's some pictures. Now, as you can tell, I didn't have a picture of anemone in my yard. So I cheated and gave you the cover of a packet, of a bulb packet for you to look at. This cyclamen is in bloom right now. I took this photo 2 weeks ago in my yard. And just to show you that that has got to be one of my favorite tubers that can come up and reappear year after year. I know we see them in a florist shop. They're intended for inside, but hardy cyclamen do well with the cool weather that we have here, and as well as the little bit of frost that we get. They just smile through it and push out these beautiful blooms. I will tell you, though, to be smart about where you place it. I have cyclamen on both sides of my courtyard. The outside of the courtyard would be south if you went straight out. But so one of the right side protected by the house is east facing. The other by the garage is west facing. This one's on the east. The west are nowhere near catching up to this one yet. They will, but they're not there yet. So think about your placement if you decide to put in cyclamen. So how do we plant and what do we do? The planting formula is the right depth and width and right time. The first thing I'm going to encourage you to do is, if your bulbs are purchased, read the packet, and we'll show a picture of a packet label in a minute. That's going to tell you everything you need to know to ensure success with that particular bulb. If that's not available, as a general rule, you'll want to plant the bulb deep enough that it represents 2.5 times the bulb width. You want to space those bulbs about 3 times their width. So if the width of the bulb is 1 inch, like those big daffodils, 3 inches apart. And if you're looking for cluster and impact from your bulbs, you'll want to plant them in clusters of, say, 12 or more. The right time to plant a bulb? Well, today, not tomorrow with the rain, but fall is the time to plant your spring bulbs when the average nighttime temperature goes between 40 and 50 degrees. For summer bulbs, plant in early spring. Don't plant them now, and most nurseries won't have the summer bulbs available for you to use right now. You'll find that some of the packages might even suggest that you soak your bulb in lukewarm water for about 2 hours before planting. Only do that if the packing instructions tell you to do so. If I had not crunched this up, it would have been a better graphic for you, but this is the kind of information you can get from the back of a planting packet. So the number that you have, when their bloom time is, their hardiness zone, so you can check it with yours, how tall they get, their habit, some features about them, planting tips, some more planting suggestions. They might tell you here or on the front whether they're attractive to bees, butterflies, or hummingbirds. And some of those pollinators are so important to the success of nature in general. This particular bulb planting schedule was created by the Sacramento Master Gardener Program. We don't have one yet for Placer County. We've received permission to use this planting schedule because often some of the planting zones here in Placer represent the same that you can find in Sacramento. Obviously, if you live at a zone different than that or high elevation, this will not be appropriate to you. I know that it might be hard to read, but you can find it in 2 places. It will be posted on our website under this presentation. When the presentation is over, give us a few days to do that. Or you can Google Sacramento County Master Gardener's bulb planting schedule. But this is a great tool for you to take and have when you think about planting in your own backyard or garden. So planting is about location, site, and how to plant. So the location for almost all spring bulbs is full sun during bloom, though a few benefit from afternoon shade. So make sure you've got that 6 to 8 window of sun for your bulbs. And as you plant, it's the time to think about color and design. For example, do you want every bulb in your front yard to be yellow or all red? That's an impact statement. Or did you want to mix and mingle the colors or the shapes or the types of bulbs so you have a different effect? Those are decisions to make, you will make as you set out to plant. When we think about preparing the soil or the bed that we're going to use, we want to make sure that we have well-drained soil that's loosened and soft. You want to add an all-purpose fertilizer and compost and rake the surface smooth. When you set out to plant, you want to set the bulbs firmly at the correct depth with a pointed tip up. Cover the bulbs with soil and water thoroughly and cover with 2-inch layer of loose mulch. Now, if you wanted to naturalize your bulbs, some of us like things right in a row, and some of us like the natural effect. So often when people naturalize, they take a handful of their bulbs, gently release them onto the soil, let them fall where they fall, and that's where they plant them. That choice is entirely up to you and the style that you have in your own garden. So where you can plant, I'm not going to read you the long list, you can, but I wanted to call out this rain lily or August rain lily. That would tell you that this is a summer bulb. And this one's grown in a mow strip, the space between the sidewalk and the street, right in my neighborhood. I always forget it's there. And then I come around in summer and all of a sudden I go, what are spring bulbs doing blooming in fall? Or yeah, in summer to fall. And then I realized that this particular bulb is a fall bulb, though it looks a lot like a daisy family with its yellow center and white petals. That's a rain lily. This is an example again of that same garden bed where there was the Peruvian daffodil where the spar axis is coming up. And you can see I've mixed for spring the spar axis and some assorted daffodils into that particular bed. I will call out one thing on this slide, and that's this line about you can plant in grass, and yes, you can. Just remember to let the bulb's foliage completely dry and turn yellow before you mow it off. That's where the plant gets its nutrient for the subsequent year. This is an example of a container planting. I'll take a break. And I always like a big pot of bulbs in my backyard. It makes me happy and smile to see the bright color of the bulbs. Make sure if you decide to containerize your bulbs that you have drainage holes in your container, that you use at least a container that's 5 to 6 inches wide and 4 to 5 inches deep. That's for just a few bulbs. This is obviously bigger. You want to use potting soil that's loose and crumbly. Do not use your existing garden soil. This is one time in a container where you can plant close together, not touching, but your items can be close together for that full impact. You'll want to water after planting and then continue to water through the growth season. And I would suggest that you fertilize only if you're reusing the bulbs. If you want to save the bulbs and reuse them, then you would use about a half strength of liquid fertilizer every 2 weeks. When I plant containers, I tend to think of them as one and done. I use it one time and it's done. This was obviously daffodils mixed in with pansies. And I see that I had some bright colored or some maybe burgundy colored pansies back here. I wish I had had them in the front row for more of a contrast. That's that idea about location. How do we maintain our bulbs or our bulb structures? So one way is we irrigate them. We water after planting, and we continue to water until the foliage dies back. Not too much water, or that could result in root rot. There's a rule about irrigation we use in the Master Gardener world, and that is the frequency of irrigation is always determined by your unique soil type and weather conditions. So there's no rule other than that's the rule. You'll monitor your own garden for that. There's a few bulbs, crocus and tulips, for example, that are tempting to rodents. And that may cause you a problem when you find no tulips come up because some underground rodent took care of eating them for you for his lunch or dinner. So there's 2 suggestions or 3 suggestions for the rodent protection. One is when you're building your bed, you put hardware cloth underneath the soil that you're going to plant, and then up the sides. That would deter most rodents from coming in. You could obviously use a container. It's really hard for the rodent to get into the container to eat those bulbs. Or you use a bulb like a daffodil that the rodents don't like. You just simply outsmart them. How do you fertilize bulbs in your, whoops, I went too fast. Too dark to see. How do you fertilize in your garden? So the large bulbs do benefit from an all-purpose fertilizer, and you have some choices about when you can apply or do that. So if you're going to use an all-purpose fertilizer, you'll want to do it when the shoots appear and again after bloom, so twice. Or you can apply compost as a fertilizing method, or you could apply a slow release fertilizer in the fall. What do you do with your bulbs during and after the season? Generally, you want to remove the blossoms as they fade on your hardy bulbs. Leave the foliage in place until yellow and dry. Again, that provides ongoing nutrient to the bulb. Plant annuals or companions nearby to kind of cover that debris if you don't like that yellow and drying look. And most bulbs benefit from division after several years of being in the ground. Want to talk just a second about bearded iris care. This particular photograph also comes from Master Gardener, comes from Pauline Sakai. And this is an example of a bearded iris after cleanup. So with an iris, remove the seed pod after the blooms fade, and the foliage will stay for a while. You want to prune back the foliage in the fall, cutting out the old growth and leaving the new shoots. By taking away all the old foliage and leaving just this new shoot coming up, you can see a new, right there, a new leaf coming out. She has prevented the overwintering of pest and disease that might be lurking in and around there. This is a rhizome, remember? You can see the horizontal growth. You can see that this bulb is not, but this one is actually emerged, if I will, above the soil. You can see the new growth point. So it's a really good slide to talk about rhizomes in more depth. We're fortunate that bulbs don't have a lot of pests, and well, other than those rodents, but we've talked about how to take care of them. But the common pests are usually these soft body insects that like to suck the nutrients out of our plants. Doggone it. There's three things that we offer as solutions to help deter, prevent those particular pests from attacking your plants. One is just a good old-fashioned spray of water. You have to do it frequently, but it knocks off the aphids and the thrips and some of these other pests. The second solution is a natural pesticide. By that, I mean an insecticidal soap, a horticulture oil, or even a neem oil as an example that you would spray on to deter. And you could encourage beneficials such as a lady beetle or ladybug or lacewing. And the one on the left is a picture of a lacewing. The one on the right is a picture of a lady beetle. She is fucking upside down on that leaf, looking for maybe this aphid or this aphid for her dinner. So those are some examples of common pests that may impact usually the new foliage of a bulb. There are some other troubleshooting things along the way to look out for. One of them is a bulb rot or the basal rot. And this is caused by a variety of fungi and bacteria. It's not unique to bulbs. It can happen in crops and other flowers. The symptoms of rot is probably you'll recognize the soft, squishy texture of your bulb, but it doesn't produce shoots. The leaves and roots start to wilt and die. So basically you've lost the bulb. How you can control for basal rot is to try and purchase disease-free bulbs. Ensure proper planting, depth, and not overcrowding. Avoid overwatering and overcrowding are examples of ways that you can help control or prevent basal rot from attacking your bulbs. One of the other problems to bulbs that those critters that crawl across the top of the soil and wipe out your entire garden when you aren't looking, slugs and snails. You can hand them off and eliminate them. You can eliminate places where snails and slugs can hide during the day. For a while, I had an extra little board on my garden bed, and finally I realized that is where the snails and slugs go to hide during the heat of the day. I removed that board and I had less trouble with snails and slugs. You might consider drip irrigation, where the water then is very specific to a part of the plant and not an overhead spray that leaves a lot of moisture in the yard, in your garden, that the snails and slugs would like. Most gardeners are familiar with an integrated pest management. It's a wonderful tool by UC Davis, and it provides out for everyone. It provides out for home garden, turf, and landscape pests. And hope you can see this clear enough, but it's very easy to navigate. Pests of homes, it lists some of them, pests of garden, common pests. You can click on there and get some remedies and solutions for what would help you deter that pest. And as always, feel free to call the UC Master Gardener hotline and ask us any garden questions about bulbs or anything else that you happen to have. So you're going to go out this afternoon. I hope I've convinced you, and you're going to buy some bulbs for your garden, and why not get a few to force indoors? Forcing means to bloom out of season. So what we're doing by this particular method of forcing is encouraging the bulb to bloom earlier than it normally would. This is often a holiday treat, a holiday gift. And this particular paper white were forced by another master gardener here in Placer County, T.C. Markle, who allowed me to show this photo to you as an example. So force means to bloom out of season. You'll have the best result when you buy the best quality bulb you can get. Look for bulbs that are specifically prepared for forcing. They may say growing indoor on the label, or you'll need to chill 35 to 45 degrees. That's a refrigerator for 10 to 12 weeks prior to forcing. This is the one time where it's okay to crowd your bulbs, pack them in there tight. Popular choices for forcing include the daffodil, amaryllis, hyacinths, tulips, crocus, and then beautiful example of paper whites. So how do we do those three methods? So if you're going to force bulb indoors in soil, it's a lot like planting a container garden, and we talked about that earlier. You'll fill your pot with potting soil, plant the bulbs halfway deep. Bulb point should be up and out of the soil. Water, keep in a cool place, which is 50 to 60 degrees until the leaves form. Move to a warmer location with a bright indirect light and maintain moist soil so the roots have moisture. That's really just putting your bulbs in a small container as you might have done outside. You can force bulbs in water. So you want to fill a clear vase with water up to the basal root. The roots should be in the water, not the entire bulb. Change water occasionally. Put in a cool location, 40 to 55 degrees. Degrees are a little inconsistent across this, but you get the idea of a cool location. Until the leaves form, just like you did above. Move to a north-facing window. Turn daily. And the reason you turn daily is to make sure that we know plants lean to water or lean to sun, right? And if it leans to the window pretty soon, as I've had, you've had your whole plant topple over. If you rotate it daily, you'll make sure that that doesn't happen. Hyacinths are one of the favorites to plant in water, and they have specially designed hourglass vases that you can use to hold one bulb for that purpose. Great activity for children to have them plant their own hyacinth bulb in water. Another option for forcing bulbs indoors is to use pebbles. So you'll fill a container. I recommend glass so you can keep track of the water level, but any container will do. Fill them with a handful of pebbles. You want that to support the roots as they grow and support the bulb intact and hold it steady. Fill with water to the pebble level. Ooh, it's almost a tongue twister. The roots will be down, the tips pointed up. The shoots grow from the tips, remember? Put it in a cool location as the others did for forcing. Move to indirect light once the flowers appear and maintain water. Narcissus are the fastest bulbs to bloom this method. So let's review this presentation. What have we talked about today and what have we learned? We know that there are 5 bulb structures. They look somewhat different from each other, but they all have the capacity to have beautiful spring blooms come in a couple of months. You want to select outdoors a sunny location with well-drained and fertilized soil, either fertilized or compost soil. You want to plant at the best depth, the best spacing apart, the width, and in the right time, and the right time is now. The water needs to depend on the soil you have and the weather conditions. So monitor the bulbs for continued moisture. Don't let them dry out, but don't let them soak either in water to prevent the rot. Fortunately, there are not many pests that will attack your bulbs. The rodents are the one exception, and we've talked about how to prevent them. You'll need some general maintenance to support new blooms and eliminate problems, and often that is cutting off the flower, the seed pod flower after it has bloomed. Allow the foliage to remain in place and then discard it. The irises, the Chinese wood orchids are a little different in that their foliage remains, but this is the general rule. You can always force your spring bulbs to enjoy indoors, and I hope you try that and you think of master gardeners when you have this beautiful fragrant bloom in your home around Christmas time or the holiday time. We've identified some pest management resources for you and referred you to our hotline for any questions that you might have. So we started with a beautiful photo from Lynn Merrick of the Bouchard Gardens in Canada, and we're going to end with this one, a second photo she took there, that combination of red tulip and then the striation on the red and white, different kind of tulip, beautiful plants. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know people are running to do errands before the storm hits tomorrow. We really appreciated having you with us. And if you will unmute your mic, you also can help us with any questions that are out there. And she unmuted. Great. Thank you, Ann. Go ahead, Becky.
Well, Ann and Sandy, we didn't have any questions today. Thank you for that presentation. I, for one, am going to be running to the nursery before the rain hits. I would like to thank you, Sandy, and remind all of you that you can find the link to the handouts and this recorded workshop soon at pcmg.ucanr.org under virtual gardening workshops. And also, if you look at under upcoming events, you'll see the links and information to all of our workshops, those that are coming up and those that have been recorded. And you can also ask gardening questions, because I'm sure some questions are going to come up after you take yourself off this this seminar, click on Ask a Master Gardener on our website, and they will be able to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you all for attending, and we'll see you later.